So it's most certainly a very dark day for Star Wars fan, and especially if you are a dedicated fan that has grown up with the original trilogy, that really lived your life during the prequel trilogy movies when they came out in theaters, and you still cherish those films to this day by George Lucas and more. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. And let's get into exactly what's going on here with Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, and what is unraveling with Star Wars as a franchise, Kathleen Kennedy, and more related to Indy 5 and how everything is connected. Now, we know that the firing plan for Kathleen Kennedy all rests on the success and/or failure of the Dial of Destiny. It's all a matter of the box office results, the numbers that are coming in, exactly what Disney considers to be subpar numbers and low fan reception. That's all a matter of their perception of things, and let's just hope that perhaps they get the idea that this is something that needs to change over at Lucasfilm, that there needs to be a shift ASAP over at that company, and to really kind of just steer things in the right path as fast as possible. But Bob Iger, at no surprise, was actually in the middle of making something that's going to go against the fandom, that's going to really steer things in a very complex path. So let's get into all of this. Now, a lot of this has to do with the whole firing plan of Kathleen Kennedy and everything related to his plan to balance things out between Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, Kathleen Kennedy, Leslye Headland, and others. So with Bob Iger currently right-sizing Star Wars projects and making big adjustments for the Star Wars brand behind closed doors, one big development may very well come across as deeply unsatisfying to many Star Wars fans that is set to leave the brand divided on both ends between the fans and the creators. One big call that Bob Iger made as a backup plan if Indy 5 is somewhat successful enough to keep Kathleen Kennedy and how she cannot be fired then from Lucasfilm is to divide projects between Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni on one end, and on the other end to have Kathleen Kennedy, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Leslye Headland, and other creators taking on their roles within the Star Wars universe. The main reason why this is a disastrous call by Bob Iger is that it would create endless fan division and creator division over at Lucasfilm and inconsistencies, and that will get in the way of Iger's plan to clean up house over at Lucasfilm in the long run. Now, with Kathleen's time at Lucasfilm highly dependent on the success and/or failure of Indy 5, which is a big deal that Disney executives settled on, if Indy 5 results are okay enough to keep her at Lucasfilm, this is Iger's new plan to create a balance between fans that support and love Kennedy's work, as well as Jon and Dave's creations of the Star Wars franchise. So let me stop right here for a second. Now, the thing that's really scary about this is that you are going to have a vicious cycle of Star Wars content if this comes to go through. You're going to have very entertaining material by Jon and Dave. If what they say about Ahsoka is true, Disney executives believe that Ahsoka is going to be the home run of Disney Plus Star Wars. In fact, they are betting it's going to be the best out of all the Star Wars shows, even better than Mandalorian Season 2. That's how much they're really betting on this series. If that ends up being the case, it's quite unfortunate that following that, Skeleton Crew is going to be a very subpar show where Jon Watts essentially marvelized the series and as well as brought in elements of Stranger Things, The Goonies meets Star Wars. And that's just not going to work. We also know Skeleton Crew is a heavily agenda-driven show between Kathleen Kennedy and Jon Watts, and The Acolyte is even worse than that, by Leslye Headland. So it doesn't stop there, because Bob Iger is making it very clear now that he has a backup plan if Kennedy comes to stay at Lucasfilm based on what happens with Indy 5. Now, we know, and we talked about this many times for the past couple of months, that there are 3 candidates waiting to be called to take over Lucasfilm, and the top of the list is Dana Brunetti. Alright, a guy that made the movie Fanboys, a very much a love letter to Star Wars fans and 1990s culture, right? Now, what's interesting about this is how Iger is panicking. he doesn't know what to do at this point, because he does fear that Indy 5 is going to be most likely in that middle point where maybe it won't fail on a disastrous level enough to the point to fire Kathleen Kennedy, so he's somewhat pulling the trigger here on creating a backup plan. Now, on top of this, the biggest concern about this recent development is that it will create an ongoing problem for the Star Wars franchise with the dangling of carrots scenario, by John and Dave's work most likely being the impressive stuff to fix the franchise, while Kennedy and her loyalists strip it down to nothingness. Iger seemingly betraying the fans by greenlighting this backup plan if Indy 5 comes to pass good enough to keep Kathleen Kennedy on board is just a disaster in the making by Disney and Lucasfilm. George Lucas is reportedly very angry about this recent decision by Iger to create this balance plan if Indy 5 does okay at the box office and fan reception. Now guys, let me just say one thing about Bob Iger. This is somebody that has refused to own his mistakes with the Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel. The only thing he said about that closing is that, oh, well, we learned from that experience and we can apply that experience to another project of ours in the future. He really does not want to take responsibility for Disney parks, but he'll take some responsibility for example, Indiana Jones 5, as he was very much on that apology train a couple of days ago. The thing that really angers me about this is that Iger and the executives at Disney, they're always back and forth with everything, and it's getting very tiresome. It really is. It's getting me very unenthusiastic about Star Wars to a point where, yeah, I'm excited about John and Dave's stuff, 100%, and there's a lot of great things happening behind the scenes there. They have a lot of shows coming out and movies that they're going to be working on, but you also have a lot of stuff that Kathleen Kennedy is destroying by incorporating the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew into the equation, and if she comes to stay, this is going to expand her roadmap of Star Wars and what she's going to be working on with Leslye Headland and others, like John Watts. So that's the only thing that worries me, is if this plan does come to pass, and it is something that has been greenlit, it's all prepared to happen, it's all prepared to go into effect within the month of July, they'll figure out if Indy 5 is that much of a failure or not, and that's the biggest concern right now. Are they going to base the numbers on regular moviegoers that know nothing about Indiana Jones, that just want to watch this as a popcorn flick, or are they going to know, which is near impossible, if the fans going to go ahead and see this movie are that upset? You know, they're going to have to really go by something like Rotten Tomatoes or some kind of feedback that's going to show the differential between common moviegoers that just see these movies that are not really informed about the franchise, and then you have the diehard fans, right? That actually go ahead and see these movies to check them out because they know the franchise through and through. So guys, I would really love to hear your take on this below in the comments. You know, what are your fears about this? What are your concerns? And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.